have to do is ask my father, who literally was shot in the Orangeburg Massacre, right? Who helped found SNCC, who marched with Marion Barry and Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, and the list goes on and on and on. And he will tell you today that he feels like this country's at 1954. And so if you want to talk about somebody...
But that doesn't mean it is. Well, you said he feels that way. That's ridiculous. Boy, he's really, I mean, it's a good strategy. Like, while the Democrats are getting all this bad publicity, just shut up. He doesn't usually do something that smart.
It's like that scene.
Bill Maher isn't new to controversy. In fact, he thrives on it. As the host of HBO's Real Time, Maher has built his brand by going where others won't, fearlessly challenging political narratives from both the left and right. But in a recent episode, even his loyal viewers were caught off guard. Maher didn't just stir the pot, he flipped it. With his signature calm, biting delivery, he publicly dismantled CNN analyst Bakari sellers for what he, and many online, called blatant race baiting. In an age where many media voices echo partisan extremes, this moment hit differently. Sellers had claimed quite boldly that life for Black Americans in 2025 is worse than during the Jim Crow era. It wasn't a throwaway line, it was the centerpiece of his argument. And Maher wasn't going to let it go unchallenged. Sitting beside him was Ben Shapiro, a conservative firebrand, who agreed with Maher for once, something that made the moment even more surreal. Across social media, the reaction was instantaneous. YouTube clips of the exchange racked up millions of views within days. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like Bill Maher was right and race baiting trended for hours. Reddit threads filled with both outrage and applause. One viral comment read, "Imagine comparing TikTok-era America to Jim Crow. What a slap in the face to actual victims of segregation." Maher didn't just strike a nerve. He sparked a digital firestorm.
Ridiculous notion is for either one of you all to have the audacity to believe that you understand what the experience is to be.
I have to object to that.
But you just said
I cannot talk about it because I am not part of a group. I am a sentient human being. You're right. There's two ways you cannot understand something. One is to be too far from it. We're too far from it. We can't see like you can. One is to be too close to something. And then sometimes you can't see it accurately either.
The explosive exchange happened on Real Time with Bill Maher, in a panel featuring conservative commentator Ben Shapiro and CNN's Bakari sellers. The discussion was already heated, focused on race relations in America, but it ignited when sellers declared that systemic racism has made life worse for Black Americans today than it was during Jim Crow. Maher, visibly stunned, immediately called the comparison ridiculous, while Shapiro pressed Sellers for evidence. Sellers, a former South Carolina lawmaker and son of civil rights activist Cleveland Sellers, came to the table with emotional weight. He cited his hometown of Denmark, South Carolina, a place plagued by poverty, food deserts, and crumbling infrastructure, as proof of systemic neglect. But what shocked viewers wasn't the problems he cited, it was the historical comparison he made. Maher, always sharp with his historical references, reminded sellers and viewers that there's a stark difference between today's challenges and the legalized brutality of the Jim Crow era. Public reaction was deeply polarized. Left-leaning voices defended Sellers, saying he was speaking from lived experience. Progressive commentators accused Maher of white-splaining and ignoring systemic realities, but others, including many moderate and independent viewers, sided with Maher. In one Reddit post that gained over 20,000 upvotes, a user wrote, "When everything is called racism, real racism loses meaning." Maher said what everyone's been afraid to say. At the core of this moment is a larger issue plaguing modern media: race baiting. The term refers to manipulating racial issues to provoke outrage, often for political leverage or media ratings. Critics argue that mainstream networks like CNN are increasingly guilty of this tactic, using extreme narratives that highlight division over unity and emotion over facts. It's not just a media problem, it's becoming a cultural one. What makes race baiting so dangerous is that it dulls the impact of real injustice. When commentators suggest that Black Americans today are somehow worse off than during an era of lynchings, voter suppression, and state-sanctioned segregation, it distorts history and misleads the public. This exaggeration, some argue, doesn't bring us closer to justice. It builds resentment and confusion. Online, the clash sparked a flood of hot takes. Maher's critics accused him of diminishing Black suffering, while his supporters praised him for pushing back against what they called emotional manipulation masked as progressivism.
confounds when it comes to these particular issues. And unless you remove the statistical confounds, you end up with trying to blame vague, shadowy figures like implicit bias, which are innately, insanely difficult, if not impossible to measure.
On X, one user summed up the tension. Yes, there's still systemic racism, but comparing 2025 to 1955 is like comparing a sprained ankle to amputation. Both hurt, but come on. Sellers' argument wasn't pulled from thin air. He drew on real, painful conditions in underserved Black communities. Issues like contaminated water, school underfunding, and poor access to healthcare. These are legitimate, often ignored problems. And from his perspective, these modern failures reflect a system that still devalues Black lives. He wasn't just debating, he was reliving history. But Maher, while acknowledging the reality of systemic shortcomings, challenged the framing. "That's a ridiculous thing to say," he told Sellers. "We have to stop this sort of victim competition." His point wasn't that modern America is perfect, but that equating it with an era of state-sponsored racism erases hard-won progress. Shapiro added fuel to the fire, demanding that Sellers clarify, would you really rather be Black in 1950 than today? The public reaction was fascinating. Clips of Maher's pushback flooded YouTube, drawing both admiration and ire. Many Black commentators on TikTok and YouTube spoke out on both sides. Some said Maher's comments were dismissive, others said they were necessary. A popular YouTube reaction video titled "Bill Maher Just Said What We're All Thinking" garnered over 500,000 views within a week. The debate didn't end with the show, it metastasized online, showing how divided the cultural conversation around race has become. The real mic drop moment came when Shapiro turned to Sellers and asked, "Would you rather be a Black man today or in 1920? Sellers tried to pivot, referring to his father's experience being shot during a civil rights protest. But Maher interjected again, saying, "That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you, here, now. You're on CNN. You're sitting on this panel. You're not in a segregated diner being hosed down by cops." The audience applauded hard. It wasn't just that Maher disagreed, it was how he did it. He stayed calm, stayed logical, and refused to let emotional appeals override historical truth. That moment sparked a clear divide among viewers. One camp called it brave, honest, and long overdue. The other called it cold, dismissive, and tone-deaf. But either way, people were talking. That one exchange dominated media headlines and trended on social media for nearly a week. Even journalists weighed in. Independent columnist Glenn Greenwald praised Maher for dismantling the lie that America is more racist now than ever before. Meanwhile, MSNBC's Joy Reid called the moment yet another example of white men talking over Black pain. The clash became a Rorschach test for how people view race, power, and progress in America. In the end, this wasn't just about Maher destroying a CNN pundit. It was a deeper cultural reckoning. Maher took a stand for historical context and intellectual honesty, arguing that while systemic issues still exist, we can't let extreme narratives rewrite the past or cloud the present. Sellers, for his part, raised painful truths about neglect in Black communities. But when those truths are framed in comparisons to Jim Crow, they lose clarity and credibility. What made this moment powerful wasn't just the words, it was the setting. On a show known for sarcasm and snark, we saw a moment of real ideological clarity. Maher, typically a liberal ally, stood with Shapiro, a conservative, in saying, "Enough is enough." It showed that some conversations transcend politics and demand honesty above all else. My take? Maher was right to draw the line. If we can't acknowledge progress, we risk alienating the very people we need to help make things better. That doesn't mean pretending things are fine, but it does mean being accurate, respectful, and careful with comparisons. Progress isn't perfect, but pretending it doesn't exist is worse. So, what's your take? Was this a much-needed correction in the public narrative, or did Maher go too far? Do you think the media is guilty of race baiting, or is it just doing its job by spotlighting inequality? Did Sellers make a fair point, or was his comparison harmful to the cause of real progress? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know where you stand. Are you Team Maher, Team Sellers, or somewhere in between? What did this exchange make you think about the way race is discussed in the media and in your own circles? If this video challenged your thinking, hit that like button and subscribe for more unfiltered breakdowns on politics, culture, and media. Join our growing community of critical thinkers who value truth over tribalism. And hey, don't just watch the conversation, be a part of it.